Ellie, we are not hearing you, and we are not seeing anything. Okay, right. Thank you very much. Yes, so greetings and welcome back to all our Indaba listeners on Talk City 91.1 FM and our viewers live on Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate your interaction and feedback. Of course, you can give us a like on YouTube and Facebook as well. You can interact with us directly by calling Talk City's number 6224911, or you can send us a voice note or a text message on the ESCTT's chat group, uh, 306 306 3687. That's 306 3687. The numbers should appear at the bottom of your screen continuously. So check there if you didn't quite get it. We have an exciting program this evening as usual. We are going to have a slight change in the order of the programming. And that's because we have uh, a new hero in Trinidad with us this evening, and that's his worship the mayor of the capital city of Port of Spain. He's here with us this evening, and we are going to have him first on the program to talk to us about the rise and fall of the Columbus hero myth and the significance of its removal and for both TNT and the Caribbean. Of course, the mayor was instrumental, decisively so, in removing the statue of Christopher Columbus. He made the announcement on Emancipation morning at the site of the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation on the 1st of August 1834. And he indicated there that he was going to remove the monument. He didn't give us a specific timeline, but within 6 days, the monument was removed. So in many ways, the mayor is a new hero for us in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a monumental event and decision that he would have taken. We commend him for being courageous and standing up perhaps to forces opposed to removing that monument. We know of some of those forces over the years. He has been able to overcome those forces and to remove the statue. So we welcome that action on the part of the mayor, and we thank all those who supported our activism over the years. Of course, the Crossroads Freedom Project, now better known as the Caribbean Freedom Project, would have been at the forefront of that activism and ably supported by the Warrell community in particular and other indigenous groups. We also had the ESC behind us as well. So we want to show our appreciation to all those who supported us, all those persons who signed the petition that was submitted to the city of Port of Spain and the Parliament. We want to express our gratitude to all of you this evening. So without further ado, Renee, you can... Sorry, I have a bad cold this evening, so I have to battle with that as well. So excuse me from time to time, my voice might be lost. So please bring up Mayor, His Worship, Alderman Chinua Alleyne. As I said, we are grateful for you. Good evening and welcome to Indaba. Mayor, welcome to Indaba.
Thank you so much.
Mayor is the current mayor of Port of Spain. He assumed that role in 2023 in August. But he had been serving on the board of directors as chairman of the East Port of Spain Development Company. He is a graduate of QRC and the University of Leeds. His specialization is in project management, business development, health management, and administration. He also holds a Master of Arts in Health Management planning and policy, as well as a ACCA certificate in public financial management. We are hoping to have Caciqua Donna Bermudez with us this evening. I hope she joins us before the program is out. The Mayor, I want to thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule. And that's really busy schedule, because we understand that you have an official commitment in the city this evening. So thank you very much. And let's address the issue at hand. And that is the statue of Columbus. But first, of course, it's your prerogative to greet our audience this evening, being here for the first time. Good evening, Mayor, and please let's hear you.
Oh, well, good evening, and thank you very much once again for giving me the opportunity to participate on this program tonight, and a special good evening to all of your viewers and all of your listeners.
Okay, I know your time is short, Mayor. You did say that you, if you want to talk about some of the challenges you had, we'll appreciate that. Some of it might be sensitive to talk about, but if you want to talk about that for us, we'll appreciate that. Some of the challenges you had between announcing the removal of the statue and taking it down. Do you want to talk about anything about that this evening?
Yeah, well, what I will say, I'm just about to reach my second year anniversary of assuming the role of the mayor of Port of Spain. I became the mayor on August 30th of 2023, as you said, and almost immediately, when I had my very first meeting with the Emancipation Support Committee, they advocated for the removal of the statue, as I know that they have done for several years. And I have been paying attention to the discourse that has been ongoing, the contribution from the Crossroads Freedom Project, the contribution from the Warao community. I was aware that the cabinet had appointed a subcommittee on statues, monuments, and signage to discuss exactly this particular issue. And so I engaged with the ESC, I engaged with different members of the community. And the from our view as the council of the city of Port of Spain, and I want to say that the decision that was taken was not my decision. The decision that was taken was the decision of the council, and it was a unanimous decision. Many of my colleagues had been in council long before me, uh, as long as 10 years before I became a member of council, or at least one member had been in council since 2013. And it was this decision is one that had the full support of the council, that they were very adamant that they would wish to see happen before the term ended. The opportunity presented itself this year in order for us to take that decision, and having announced the decision on the morning of African Emancipation Day 2025, we immediately started to consider what it would take to effect the removal, and what we would take to effect the removal in a way that was safe. We know that whilst there were many people across the country that had a very favorable view of the decision to remove the statue, very many people have differing opinion as to what to do with it after it was removed. So even this evening, maybe about 35 minutes ago, a member of the public engaged me in conversation about what we should have done with the statue, and instead of making it available to the National Trust, we should have thrown it in the sea. And so I know that there are a lot of different opinions about what should be done with the statue. But there's overwhelming support, in my respectful view, for the decision to remove it. And we felt quite strongly that the decision should be implemented um, in the shortest possible time, and it should be implemented in a way that did not create any public rancor.
Yeah, this is an important moment in our history, and I understand your humility in terms of recognizing the unanimity of your council, but we understand that the council had taken a similar unanimous vote during the leadership of the former mayor, and the mayor had vetoed that decision. You may correct me, of course, if I am off track there. So, in that regard, we look at you as having, a particular strength of courage and character and consciousness at being at a certain point in history and to ensure that you're on the right side of history as well. So it is in that context that we look at you as a leader of the city today. Of course, you can comment to that on that if I am not quite correct with respect
Yeah.
to the statement I made.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is that the mayor of Port of Spain does not have a veto power. Um, but you one can appreciate that the rate of pace of implementation of any one decision or another is increased if the mayor takes personal interest. And so this particular decision, I ensured that the all of the relevant technocrats in the city, as well as the involvement of not only a broad cross section of stakeholder groups, including yourself, Dr. Fergus, but also ensuring that the National Trust was on board. Um, because for better or for worse, this item is older than all of us, and this item has a story separate and apart from the story of Christopher Columbus. The statue has a story, and part of the story of the statue is written with the uh, all of the stains of the protest action that has been taken against it over the years. So that if you look at it, you would see the red paint that was thrown on it a few years ago. The statue has no hands. There are all sorts of protest action that had been taken over the course of several years that are part of the statue's story. And we felt quite strongly that for better or for worse, the story of the statue should be preserved and told so that the yet to be born, the children of the future, would have the opportunity to learn about the story of the protest action that led to the eventually to the statue's removal.
Well said, Mayor. I know you have to run. I want to ask you about the two committees that you talked about in
Yeah,
terms of redesigning the monument and renaming of Columbus Square. But
yeah.
before you go to that, I want to ask you about something that has troubled me within recent times. And I wasn't aware that the new roundabout, as you go towards West Moorings, was named Columbus Circle until just about 2 weeks or less
Hmm.
ago.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm concerned about that. And while it's a very new roundabout, and therefore that name would have gone up at the height of our campaign against the Columbus statue, which seems to me an act of impunity by whoever insisted that this circle must be named after one of the most egregious criminals, colonial criminals, imperialist criminals that would have visited this region. So, was your corporation aware or involved in the naming of that circle? And what can the corporation do about it, Mayor?
But briefly, that location is outside of the city limits.
Outside.
So yeah, so that the city ends just about by the walkover by Cocorite. That's just about where the city ends. So that anything further west of that is not within the boundaries of the city. So that there's no involvement of this council of the city of Port of Spain in that particular development.
So, in terms of local government, which one is responsible?
Well, that space is in the Diego Martin borough.
Diego Martin. Okay.
But the roundabout may not be the province of the borough, right? Because it's on a highway, so that
Oh, okay.
it is more likely that it is the province of the highway authority, which would be the Ministry of Works, or the well, in the former government is Ministry of Works and Transport. I'm not sure if it is likely under the Ministry of Transport, but I don't want to comment. You know, because it may be the Minister of Works, but I'm not too sure. So I don't want you to quote me on
Yeah,
which
well, regardless
one
of
it
which
is.
ministry, I appreciate your caution, Mayor.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the Prime Minister did commit to the principles and goals of reparations on Emancipation Day. And one of the decisions taken by CARICOM heads concerned renaming and removing of colonial memorials
yeah,
dedicated to colonial criminals such as Columbus and Picton and Abercrombie and these guys. So
yeah,
perhaps we need to speak to the Prime Minister concerning that particular offensive action on the part of whoever was responsible for it.
yeah. I suspect that it is the responsibility of the highway authority, but I'm not quite sure. But it certainly is not the responsibility of the city of Port of Spain.
Yeah,
And
appreciate that.
yeah, to tackle your
Yeah.
other question relative to the committees,
Yes.
those committees are yet to be formed. There's some work that is still to be done at the site formerly known as Columbus Square. The monument, as the general public may or may not know, the monument was in three parts. What we've taken off is the cap or the statue at the top, and there are two other parts of the monument that are to be removed. And we are in the process of scheduling another site visit for a technical assessment so that we can remove that part and ensure that upon its removal, there's somewhere to put it. And so that is yet to be completed. But we felt it was very important to move with some measure of efficiency in ensuring that the process began. And so we've done that. And then with relative to the committees thereafter, the council will consider recommendations for the establishment of the committee, and that committee would be responsible for determining the name that is to be uh, that square is to be renamed, engaging in the public consultation that will be required, and engaging the national community in seeking their ideas about what we should do. And another committee, we had given a commitment to establishing to develop a monument that would honor the memory of the victims of the genocide of indigenous peoples, the transatlantic slave trade, and colonialism.
Thank you
So,
very much, Mayor. I don't want to detain you much more, but before you leave, could you tell us how things are progressing with respect to the renaming of the Oxford Street section that the corporation has agreed to name Comiture Way?
yeah, so that the actual mechanism that needs to be triggered in to effect the renaming is not a very complex legal mechanism, but there's work that needs to be done in engaging with the residents or premises that will be affected, so that we can give them enough time in order to prepare to make whatever changes they'll have to make at Tiantec or Wassel, what have you. TT Post, for example, would need to be engaged, so that there are some steps that we need to follow in order to effect the renaming in a way that is not disruptive. And so, again, with that, uh, as we move to establish the committee for the renaming of the square, we would simultaneously seek to establish the committee to work through the technical parts of renaming of Oxford Street, and to ensure that the activity, when the renaming is actually done, that the activity is one that is honorable to our ancestor.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Any closing words as you leave us this evening? And of course, we hope to have you back again sometime on Indaba.
Yeah, well, I just to thank you for providing me with the opportunity to have some conversation with you all tonight. To thank you for the advocacy that you all have done and continue to do, and to let you know that your hopes, dreams, and aspirations have not fallen on deaf ears.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
And thank you once again, and good night to all of your viewers and listeners.
Thank you. So there you have it. That was the Mayor of the city of Port of Spain, His Worship Alderman Chinua Alleyne. Thank you very much. Shabaka, you time us there. I was going to say like police, but that might not be a good thing to say, seeing that the mayor is in a police station talking to us. Well, the mayor had to run, and I was looking, hoping that you would pop up before, man.
That's all right. I think I heard that you congratulated him for his courage and his application to this particular task. But I understand that you've also decided to launch a new campaign.
No. I talked to you about that, Shabaka. You know my concern about that is not just launching a campaign. I was particularly concerned that the city of Port of Spain might have allowed that to happen. But of course, that's clarified now. That's outside the boundaries. Mm-hmm. So, but we can't let that rest. You know that, Shabaka. We can't let that rest.
Yes. Well, the question would be, conscientizing the community in that area to understand the problems that I entail there. Because what has happened so far with these projects is that even though I just came from the supermarket where people were stopping me and congratulating us on the work we've done to remove the Columbus statue, so there's definitely a certain popular sentiment. But there's still a large part of the population that's not fully aware of what's happening or fully understand why. What is the significance of this action? What does it mean? And I think tonight on this program here, we get a chance to address those issues, not only for our listeners on 91.1, but of course, those tuning in on YouTube or Facebook as well. So I want us to really tackle those questions, but also, as I said, as I addressed with the vice chancellor of the University of West Indies here, the campus principal, St. Augustine campus. That's as I address the issue with the director of the National Trust. It is time for those institutions, the tertiary level institutions now, NALIS, and so on, to take up the mantle of making the population, that part of the population that doesn't fully understand these issues, why we changed our coat of arms, why we removed, and we want to continue to remove all these monuments to Christopher Columbus, why it's important, what is the value of it, does it have a value? These are the questions that have to be answered by the tertiary level institutions, the academics, by debates, forums, seminars, etc. And if that is not done, it'll be another 50 years before we get the entire population to understand what is taking place here.
Yeah, that is correct. It does not necessarily have to be the campus principal. Remember, there's a guild of students, and perhaps we can engage them, to set up some kind of discussion forum. We don't necessarily have to go through the principal. Yeah, of course, I'm sure the principal would be supportive.
I got to tell you, the onus is not on us anymore. We've done the hard work, the heavy lifting of conscientizing enough of the population that we could have handed the previous mayor, a petition with over 10,000 signatures. We petitioned Parliament in 2021. We did all the heavy lifting to get to this point where we have been able to overthrow the imperialist view of the past, as reflected in the whole notion of discovery, to remove the discovery narrative from our landscape. We've done the hard work. I think now the ball is in the court of those people or those institutions that have the responsibility of addressing popular memory, right? I mean, it would be a hell of a task for us now to take it upon our shoulders, to sponsor the next leg of the journey. You know what I mean? You and I digging into our pockets, creating seminars all over the country to help people understand. This now falls in the court of those parties responsible for curating national memory, popular understanding of the dynamics and changes that are taking place in society. Those institutions have to step forward now. We will support them. We will work with them. We will do whatever it takes to move this issue forward. But we've done the hard work already, Dr. Fergus. We set up from 2016. We were meeting with students on campus. I have to thank Josanne Leonard, Felipe Noguera, for agreeing to come and chair those sessions on different parts of the campus. And the African Society on campus, agreed to host one session as well. All the other organizations, Milner Hall students who came forward, there's so many different parties that were involved in this. When we talk about the Columbus struggle, we're talking about the Warao community. Some of the elders in that community have passed away, in the middle of the struggle, and leaving others to mourn them and to recall them at this time. There's so many people who sacrificed so much to change Milner Hall, to remove Columbus from his plinth, that celebration of genocide and slavery, and to change the narrative at Lopino, which celebrated the slave master and ridiculed our ancestors as loyal slaves. A lot of work has gone into these things, and I think now all the institutions and you know what this reminds me of, that period when the government decided under the former government, the former minister of education decided that she was going to take it upon herself to draft legislation and implement legislation, or not legislation, but regulations, right? To protect African hair. After we had done all the work for 30 years, refused to invite us to the stakeholder meeting, and then came up with legislation that we explained to them right off the bat would not do enough to transform the entrenched colonial value system around here. And and of course we were dismissed, and of course children continue to be harmed and hurt by these old colonial ideals that still exist in the society. I think the institutions have to be responsible. Again, you take the last, when we got the 3 ships removed from the coat of arms, the government took it upon themselves to do it without consulting at the last minute, without engaging us at the last minute. And of course, they did it in such a way that 90% of the population didn't understand what it was really about. They thought it might be a political move. It might be a distraction from something else the government was involved in. People had all kinds of ideas because the government didn't explain to people that our coat of arms was a celebration of genocide, and that they were under serious pressure from civil society and from the CARICOM Reparations Commission to end that celebration of genocide in this country, which made us a laughing stock for the world. We pursuing reparations and celebrating the beginning of the whole institution of colonialism, for which we want reparations. It was foolish.
Shabaka, I don't quite agree with you. I understand where you're coming from, but I do not really quite agree with you, because we are saying, what you are saying is that the reason that we have taken so long to get to where we are now was largely because of the regressive forces in those same institutions you're talking about. And now that we have reached to this point, what you're saying is that you expect the responsibility for enlightening the population to be with those same regressive forces. So I cannot agree with that. I think we need to come to some kind of middle ground where we have to continue to play a role. where the Emancipation Support Committee, for example, needs to play a more central role in mobilizing that kind of institutional support, where the Reparations Committee, as a matter of fact, that's part of our mandate, that we can also engage in that kind of mobilization and perhaps get government, because it has to reach at the level of government. Unless government articulates a policy with respect to monuments and so on, you don't expect that the forces entrenched in these institutions going to take it upon themselves to do something about decolonizing the landscape, about educating people about the need to decolonize the landscape. I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. If we are realistic, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
right? We cannot, you would say that the ball is in their court, but we cannot drop the ball in their court. Otherwise, the ball going to stay on the ground. I can tell you that for sure. The ball is going to stay on the ground. Grass is going to grow around it, and you wouldn't see any ball again in a short time to come.
Wow.
Right?
Something.
Yes.
Well,
but I would like to go on to the Africa report. I think the radio station is now back from the Lotto play with break. So let's do the Africa report, and then we come back to this topic.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. So, Renee, if you're hearing us, the Africa report, get ready to bring up the Africa.
Who told you that Captain Thomas Sankara rested in peace?
The Africa Report welcomes back our Indaba audience after our mid-year recess. In this edition, we look at some of the major events on the continent since our last report.
Oui. Nous disons qu'il y a une minorité qui...
The star item this week will be the introduction of Africa's youngest Pan-Africanist, a child prodigy from Uganda. But let's begin with what may be an obscure item for many people, the presentation of Africa on global maps. The African Union has recently called for a correction to the skewed 16th century Mercator map of the world to reflect a less racialized and more scientific representation of the world's land masses. The three leading advocacy groups currently campaigning for this change are Correct the Map, Africa No Filter, and Speak Up Africa. They are all endorsed by the African Union. Moki Mokura, Executive Director of Africa No Filter, calls the Mercator Map, quote, the world's longest-running misinformation campaign, end quote. They are calling on organizations like the World Bank and the United Nations to adopt the Equal Earth Map. If one looks at the Mercator Map, one would see that Russia dwarfs Africa, when the reality is that Russia is just about half the size of Africa. All northern land masses reflect this optical illusion. Actually, this projection of Africa has been around for quite some time. I recall Dr. Fitzroy Batiste using such a map in his African history lectures since the late 1990s. We knew it as the Peters projection map of Africa. I continued using it after succeeding him. Interestingly, backing for the AU's effort has come from Ambassador Dobrin Omad, a vice chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. To Omad, the Mercator map is an ideology of power and domination. The Africa Report endorses this campaign and hopes that all Pan-African and reparatory justice groups lend their voices to this campaign. Regular listeners of Indaba may recall that the Africa Report highlighted the struggle of Nigeria's largest airline, Air Peace, to secure landing rights at London's Heathrow Airport. The airline was only allowed to operate in and out of the less prestigious Gatwick Airport. After months of negotiations, the British authorities have finally capitulated to allow the airline to fly to Heathrow from October 2025. This is a major victory for Air Peace and Nigeria's diplomatic clout, as expected of Africa's most populous nation. Air Peace has announced it will close its Gatwick operations to concentrate on Heathrow to maximize resources. The Caribbean also looks forward to air peace to bridge the Atlantic with regular commercial flights. All is not sunshine and smiles on the continent. Since we embarked on our July break, America has stepped up its political and diplomatic pressure on African countries to accept Trump's deportees, many of whom are described as barbaric and dangerous criminals who are not citizens of any African state. The latest country to quietly do so is Rwanda. What began with 6 deportees to South Sudan and 5 deportees to Eswatini in July has escalated to 250 deportees to Rwanda in August. The Rwandan government tried to soften the insulting situation by contending that it will be the one to approve each individual proposed for resettlement. It is time that the African Union stand up to Trump and stop this imperialist, racist bullying and belittlement of Africans. Projecting forward, one of the next biggest events on the continent will be the second African Union CARICOM Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, from the 7th of September. That's on AU CARICOM Day. Some of the top issues are expected to be unity and reparations, including climate justice. Before introducing the latest phenomenon in Pan-Africanism, let's listen to this clip from a Ghanaian admirer of Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary president of Burkina Faso.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, is making us on the rest of the continent look like we don't have leaders. He is making our leaders look like they are invalid. Look, lovely people, let me tell you something. Burkina Faso, you are enjoying real leadership. You are enjoying what is called leadership. The man is performing beyond democratically elected president.
This is just to remind us of the ongoing revolution in the 3 Sahelian states. And now let me conclude this week's report with some clips showcasing Africa's brilliant, young, visionary Pan-Africanist, Emmanuel Akot, the 11-year-old primary school pupil who lives in Uganda but was born in South Sudan and got separated from his parents during the Civil War. Full of confidence about the future of Africa and African unity, he calls himself the President of Africa because he believes that a united Africa will emerge in his lifetime and that it will be a young person of his generation that will become its first president. Imagine an 11-year-old being hosted by heads of state and government officials in Kenya and Zimbabwe. Akot is already living his dream. Listen to some of his teachers and mentors, late and present.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
who inspires you among the Pan-Africans, the late Pan-Africans? Who
The late-
inspires you much?
The little Pan-Africans. Kwame Nkrumah.
Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
Yes.
Of Ghana?
Yes, of Ghana.
Okay.
Then Thomas Sankara.
Thomas Sankara, among
Yes.
the late.
Yes.
How about among the present one? Who inspires you most?
Patrick Lodge Otieno Lumumba. Yes, in this present one. Yes, and reason why I like him so much, like he loves Africa and he resembles Africa.
Himself.
Yes, himself he resembles Africa.
Oh,
Then Ibrahim Traoré, Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
also inspires you.
Yes, sir.
How many 11-year-olds even know these names, not to mention what they stand for? Listen to his reasons for pursuing high school education in Kenya. Remember, he is still in primary school.
So after your primary level,
Yes.
where do you wish to go to have your high school from?
To have my high school from Kenya.
Kenya?
Yes.
Wow. Why Kenya?
Like their Kiswahili is pretty good and I want to learn Kiswahili. Since I want to promote Kiswahili as a major language in Africa, I should also myself know Kiswahili.
Listen to him critique the current obstacles to intracontinental travel.
I have only one question for President Ramaphosa.
Ramaphosa.
Yes, of South Africa. Why do you need a visa from Uganda to South Africa? Because the Baganda in Uganda
Okay.
are like relatives to the Zulu in South Africa.
Exactly.
First of all, they are all Bantu. When In Zulu, they call mukono a hand. And even in Baganda, here in Uganda, they call a hand mukono. They call rest umula. And even here in Uganda, we call rest umula. Then why should I get a visa to go and see my friend from South Africa, Julius Malema? Why?
There's no need. You don't say need for visa.
I don't see.
The next clip further demonstrates Akkad's solid political education.
That Kwame Nkrumah rested in peace. Who told you that Captain Thomas Sankara rested in peace? Who told you that Mwalimu Kambarage Julius Nyerere rested in peace? Who told you that Nelson Mandela rested in peace? Who told you that Patrice Lumumba rested in peace? Patrice Lumumba cannot rest in peace, yet he is seeing the situation in DRC of Congo. They can't all rest in peace until Africa is united. Because that was their main objective, their main goal, what they were looking for.
There is a lot more, but let's hear him on the most current event in this final clip, the AU CARICOM Summit.
When I get a chance to attend the AU Summit, which sits in Ethiopia, I have only one question to ask the members who have been sitting there before.
What question?
What have you been discussing for so long? What have you been talking about for so long? To the extent that some African countries are still fighting each other up to now. Yes, what have they been talking?
Or discuss.
Yes.
As I said, it's just an introduction of this amazing Pan-African prodigy. Indaba salutes you, Mr. President. Yes, so there you have it. That's the Africa Report, and an amazing young man. I really didn't know what to make of Akkad. I've been tracking him for a couple months now. I wondered, is he precocious or is it, and we are witnessing an authentic prodigy, right? One elderly woman in Zimbabwe, at the time when he was there, thought that he was too brazen for his age. Of course, we have a lot of brilliant young people like that across Africa, so he's not unique in that regard. But I thought, he is a wonderful model for young people. His knowledge of Pan-Africanists and Pan-Africanism, whether it is from his coaching or whether it is from his consciousness, his internal consciousness, it doesn't really matter to me because of his age, so he would grow into that for sure once he maintains it. Shabaka, what do you think? I know your own son was of that kind of bold, confident kind of individual as well, and perhaps yourself. But I know about your son, not about you. So, what do you think? What do you think about this guy?
As you say that, I just met the wife of a young man who left this country many years ago. He's now a PhD, one of the universities in the US. I'll get a chance to see him tomorrow, but I remember him as an 11-year-old, and he could recite for me the names of every single current African leader that was current on the continent at the time. He named all the countries. He was, both he and his brother were extraordinary back in those days, and they had read Nkrumah and so on and could quote him, and they were quite extraordinary young men. And so, that type of genius is definitely something that is dispersed across the African world. And so, we look forward to seeing that those around that young man will provide the kind of nurturing environment in which he could thrive and make something of that clear and apparent genius that he is showing now at 11. Because, of course,
he lives like an orphan in a sense. I mean, in terms of his mom and his dad, he has no clue where they were. he was virtually, separated from them, lost. They may be alive, so he may not be an authentic orphan, but he does live in an orphanage. And he has been brought up like that, which makes him all the more, a phenomenon.
Indeed, and of course, it speaks to the tragedy that is still on the tragedies that are still unfolding on the African continent all these years after the end of colonialism, or I would say all these years into the neo-colonial landscape. But we there's a lot of work to be done on the continent to protect.
Yeah, despite those misfortunes, we had these outpourings of genius by so many by so many young people. As you said, we have highlighted some of them on Indaba before. Brilliant young men. Could imagine what the continent would be if not for these tragedies around the place.
Yeah,
you imagine, and perhaps that's one of the reasons, that the industrial capitalist countries have an interest and investment in keeping Africa destabilized, because they know the kind of genius that resides in Africa and what it would be like if there is political stability on the continent to allow these minds to flourish in circumstances of peace.
But Doc, I one of the things that that did come up in that conversation was the whole word Bantu, which I do have my own issues with. I prefer a formulation of the reason for the linguistic unity that we see across the continent that has connections to Egypt, the Kemet. I prefer to see those things discussed in terms of the ideas of Cheikh Anta Diop and Theophilo Benga, rather than through the lens of Wilhelm Bleek and other Europeans from that period 200 years ago, who described the groups that they saw this linguistic unity in as Bantus. That type of European vocabulary being applied to our people is dangerous and something we have to be very, very careful about. There are other ways.
I particularly noted that. Noted that, but remember, he's an 11-year-old and he's learning from.
I'm not
Mendes as well.
But it's interesting. We are, all of us are living within in these post-colonial paradigms where we're all the victims of colonial epistemic violence enacted on or through knowledge, and we're all trying to weave our way out of it. Whether it's words like Negro and nigger, or all kinds of different ways to see discovery. We talk about tonight on tonight's program, which I want to get into. Because what we did by removing monuments in Toronto, the monuments of Columbus on our coat of arms and in Port of Spain, was to overthrow that imperialist view of history that we, looking at the past through the lens of discovery. And I think it's very important for us to understand that we're involved in a process like this. I want to make mention of one more thing before we move back into that conversation, though. Right now, the Caribbean news reports are coming in that there is a nuclear submarine and thousands of troops, foreign troops, within the waters of the Caribbean. And this is something that we have to pay close attention to. This region is what we would call a zone of peace. A very important thing. And what do we mean by that? It signifies it's a commitment that our leaders have referred to many times over the years, that signifies our resolve to end disputes or to address disputes here peacefully, maintaining friendly relations among nations through diplomacy. That's a very important thing. This must never be a zone where particularly foreign powers come in to engage in their own geopolitical interests, to pursue their own geopolitical interests through the use of weapons of mass destruction. This is not what the Caribbean is about. This is something we must raise our voices at this time to ensure that at least it is well known that we oppose that type of activity. And we hope that is not what we are going to be looking at in the near future. So I just want to make that statement as we look at the kinds of geopolitical challenges that the continent of Africa faces, as we congratulate the African Union for embracing an idea that was hatched in the diaspora many decades ago, that it was inappropriate for the continent, for the map of the world, to treat the continent of Africa in the way that it did. As we congratulate them for that, and we look at their own geopolitical concerns, I want us to put our own geopolitical concerns on the table, and remind people that all the stakeholders involved, that this is a zone of peace.
Well, I think you have to consider also that from time to time, the countries of the Caribbean and the United States engage in what they call military exercises. So these nuclear submarines perhaps have been around all the time, and it's only from time to time they might be in the news. But your point is well taken, and I think it's a commitment that should be driven by CARICOM and other heads of government in the Caribbean as well.
Yeah. So in the last 10 minutes or so that we have, let me just say, to make this very, very clear, that what we have done in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have set an example here for the rest of the region, is to overthrow or to reject the imperialist view of history. That is to say, to look at the past through the lens of discovery. And what do we mean by that? That's a way of looking at the past that rationalizes the expansion of empire, the subjugation, enslavement, and extermination of native peoples, and the exploitation of their lands, and frames the protagonists of these great crimes, or the great crimes involved in all these things, as heroes and agents of progress and civilization. We have rejected the imperialist view of the past represented by the term discovery. That's very significant. And many other Caribbean nations have been in touch with us now, the Puerto Ricans, the Dom Rep in particular, those nations where Columbus planted himself in the early days.
I think, Shabaka, just to stick a pin, I think we need to let our audience know, because I don't think we had done that before our break, about our intervention in the case in the Bahamas. I don't think we should close off without referencing that. So you can include that in your comments.
Yes, indeed, of course. So what I'm pointing out here now is that this struggle doesn't end at the borders of Trinidad and Tobago. It didn't start here. It was always, it's a problem across the entire hemisphere. The Columbus Monument, when we move it, we're not just moving the symbolic celebration of genocide and slavery. We're breaking our perverse and ideological commitment to the idea of discovery, the idea of looking at our past in a particular way that could take somebody who was involved in slavery and genocide and turn them into an agent of progress and civilization, a hero. And so, and of course, this has ramifications for the entire way that we look at the past, the entire way that we were given the entire body of information we received from the colonial period, and all the assumptions involved in it, which informs the way we see our past. We remember the past. And so it is a huge development for the Caribbean. And as I said, it's going to impact, we hope it will impact positively on the efforts we're making in the Bahamas right now, on behalf of Shervan Darzi Smith, who took a sledgehammer to the Columbus Monument in 2021 and was convicted for it in October 2024 last year, and is now facing a prolonged period in which he has to, return to court to pay installments of a fine he was given. We want to have that conviction overturned, and we also have written the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, asking him to consider carefully two things. One, what he's going to do with that Columbus monument, because that country is still at a point where they're not sure if they're going to try to have it refurbished and returned, or if they're going to keep it in storage. We want him to consider carefully what they're going to do with all their Columbus monuments in the Bahamas. Bahamas is actually the place where Columbus initiated his genocidal invasion and occupation of the Caribbean. And so it should be a place that, is clear about what needs to be done with his memory and monuments, reverential monuments to him. And so we've encouraged the Bahamian government to follow Trinidad's example and to establish a task force to look into the celebration of Columbus and other colonial monuments that may be inappropriate going forward in there as a democratic and independent sovereign country. So those are the issues that are taking place in the
But
Bahamas.
at the top of our intervention is the petition to the Mercy Committee. I think you should mention that as well, Shabaka.
Yes, well, I didn't get into the details, but we have petitioned the Mercy Committee, and we have in that petition, we outline why we think Shervan Dazi should be pardoned, and perhaps even viewed as a hero along the lines of Rosa Parks, who, during the civil rights movement, stood up against an unjust law and catalyzed the movement. And became an icon of democracy and civil rights in the process. We think that perhaps he should be viewed that way. And of course, in that letter to the Mercy Committee, we've outlined the arguments related to reparations and made it very clear that Columbus, who was once a hero, is now widely reviled as one of the greatest progenitors of genocide in the history of the world. And there are many countries, at least 17 by my last count, that have laws against the minimization, trivialization, or denial of genocide, which is what every single Columbus monument actually does. That's what it functions to do. And so we think we've made a strong case. We know that there was an initial response from the Minister of National Security, which was articulated in the Tribune and in the Jamaica Gleaner. But of course, we know that the minister had not yet read the petition before he made his comments. So we expect, having read the petition, he would be better informed and perhaps more amenable to addressing the issues that we've raised and seeking clemency for Brother Smith.
Yes, indeed. We are at the top of the hour, and perhaps, yes, Nelly is talking. Yes, so we want to thank the listeners on Talk City for being with us this evening on the resumption of our programming for what is the second season of 2025, taking down Columbus from its physical splint is perhaps the easier task for Brother Shabaka. Taking the Columbus down from our mind is the real challenge and the final frontier in decolonizing, the decolonization of the mind. And that would be a much harder task. But of course, taking down the monument is symbolic and an important step towards that. But taking Columbus from our mind, and using that term, of course, metaphorically, much more than Columbus. Taking Columbus from our mind, that's a real challenge for us as a colonized people living in a post-colonial state. Yes.
Dr. Fergus.
Yes, Nelly.
Yes, wonderful conversation this evening. As you did mention, we are at the top of the hour. and we do need to revert to other programming. But I would give you the opportunity to close off. Yourself and Mr. Kambon, you can have your final words and advise your listeners to log on to your live stream if you are continuing into overtime.
Thank you so much, Nelly, and we're glad to hear you. Listeners on Facebook and YouTube, that's Nelly on Talk City 91.1 FM.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Shabaka, you can close the program, Shabaka.
1 FM. A good night, and of course they can look forward to the work that we will continue along the lines of decolonization in this country. There are lots more to talk about. Dr. Fergus has been doing some great work up in Lopino, and I expect that there's going to be some pushback over the next couple of days. So there's a lot.
As Nigerians say, fire on the mountain, Shabaka. It's now fire on the mountain. I can't say much more because I have I've been given some information in confidence. So, but it's fire on the mountain. Believe me.
Yes.
We are going to get reports coming up as a follow-up to that Lupino event, and it's very controversial now. So it's not over yet, and as they say, it's not over until it's over.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We look forward to it, Dr. Fergus, and I'm sure you will acquit yourself well in the battle.
Indeed. Yes. So thank you all, whether on Talk City, Facebook, or YouTube. Have a good evening, good night, and see you next week.
Take care.